Today we have a 2013 Mini Cooper 1.6 diesel with roughly 82,000 miles on it. So as the MOT was done on this vehicle, they picked up on the front brake pads and discs being a bit low, and the customers asked if we could replace them. So that's what we're going to cover in this video. If you're doing brake pads, front or rear, it's a good idea to take off the cap to the brake fluid reservoir first, because when you wind the pistons in or push the pistons in, the brake fluid will come up and trickle over. Unfortunately, it's a little bit difficult to make a tidy job of it. You can't really catch it unless, I guess, you could siphon some out first. If the brake fluid does trickle over, when you're finished, we'll run through it anyway. It's water soluble, so it's a good idea just to put the cap on and rinse it off, because it also makes a good paint stripper. So if you do spill it anywhere, make sure you've got some water to rinse it off. So it's a good idea before you jack the car up to crack the wheel bolts loose. Also a good idea to ask the customer, if they're still with you when they drop the car off, where to find the locking wheel nut key. It can be in a number of different places, and it just saves pulling the car apart to try and find something that they might have in the kitchen drawer at home. Anyway, I'll put that on there. Right, next we'll take it up halfway and get the wheel off. Just be ready to catch the wheel when you take the last bolt out. Sometimes they're stuck on the hub, and other times they just jump off at you. That weren't so bad. So now we've got the wheel off, you can see straight away these discs have got quite a lip on them, which is what was picked up on the MOT. The brake pad looks sort of just over half worn when you look at it down there, but if you look on the inside here, you can see that the wear indicator sensor is virtually rubbing on the lip of the disc because the pads have worn right in. So we'll make a start on stripping things down. So I've decided to start by locating the multi-plug for this wear sensor loom, which disappears off behind here. So it looks like we've got a screw here to, well, that ain't going to undo very easily. Oh yeah, there we go. Sometimes these plastic fittings can be a bit of a nightmare when they get older. So you want to undo that screw, but not fully, and then just pull the whole thing out. And I believe there's one screw down here for the undershield. That's it. Like a carpet felt. Ah, there we go. There's two plugs there. So it's the upper one, which goes down to the lower one. It's the white plug there. So I've got a little tab there to press in, and then it should just pull apart. I can unclip it. Put that back down for now. It's clipped on to the ABS sensor loom. Need a pair of pliers for that one. That's it. Pop the bleed nipple dust cover off and just let that hang down. So I'm going to start by undoing the two 13 mils, one there, one at the top, and you need to hold the 15mm nut still. So it's good if you can work the two against each other. Fairly tight because of the Loctite thread lock on the bolts. Right, wriggle that off. If it doesn't come off, just get a screwdriver in here, lever against the disc, and you should be able to pull the caliper over, because that will in turn push the piston in slightly, just give you a bit more space to play with. Right, okay, now that's off, it's a good idea, you can have a look behind this rubber seal, make sure the piston's all nice and shiny, which it does look, not rusty and corroded. If this rubber boot gets damaged, the water can get in and cause pitting and cause the caliper piston to seize. Another thing to check is these two sliders, make sure that they're free. Again, that can give the symptoms of a seized caliper. So these brake pads should just slide out. Sometimes they can stick in these anti-rattle shims, and that would give the same symptom as a seized caliper. When you put your foot on the brake, they squeeze together on the disc and they don't release properly if they're sticking in there, so it's a good idea to make sure these are all clean and greased. That's it, the pad's out, and you can see there the wear sensor has just started touching and going through. Right, so to get this carrier off, I want to give it a good clean up in the vise. There are two 16mm bolts there, which I'll see if I can undo with the gun if it'll fit in there. Right, one carrier off, we'll take this over to the vise and give it a good clean up. Right, so we're in the vise now, just makes life a bit easier. These shims, anti-rattle shims, they are removable, but I'm going to leave them there just to give them a bit of a dust off first. And you could stop there and put it back together, but I like to just pop these off, give the underside clean, which you don't generally find much on. But what you do find is sometimes the actual caliper carrier, it rusts up and expands in there, closing the gap on the pad so it doesn't slide around so freely. I think this is the this might be the top one. You generally find the bottom one where the water sits a bit worse. Yeah, there's a bit there. Not a lot. So, I don't think that would have caused any issues, but while it's off, it's just something else to bear in mind. That's it. That's ready for refitting, but we'll go ahead and get the disc off next. So the front disc, all that's holding it on now is this grub screw here, which is a Torx 50 bolt. So I'm just going to give it a tap first, just to shock it and free it, if there is any corrosion around it. I mean, I'm doing this with a gun. If you're doing it by hand, it's probably a good idea to do it before you take the caliper off. You can generally put a screwdriver in an old disc like that, and as it turns round, it butts up against the caliper carrier, stops it turning, so you can lock it. Or, if the caliper's still on, get somebody to put their foot on the brake. But with a gun, you can see that generally comes off quite easy. And luckily, the disc wasn't held on with a load of corrosion. So I think you can see the lip on the disc there is quite bad. What I'll do now, I've got my wire brush here. Just give this a quick dust off. Make sure there's nothing stuck on here, so when you put the new disc on, it goes on flat. Otherwise, you could end up with brake judder. Okay, it's all ready to go back together. Give that a little blast off with some brake and clutch cleaner while I've got it here. The new disc, as you can see, covered in an oily residue from the pack. That's just to stop it from corroding while it's being kept in the store building, in its packaging. I'll just try and get off the worst of it with this bit of brake cleaner, degreaser. So brake discs for this particular model, prices do range depending on, the manufacturer of the discs. These sort of mid-range ones you'd probably pick up for around £45 each, £40 each, and the pads I'd say around about £25 for a set. So wherever you go, just make sure you've got your vehicle registration number, and they should be able to look up the parts that you need. Okay, that's tight. We'll go ahead and get the caliper carrier on next. So we've just got the 2 bolts to put in to hold the carrier on, 16mm ones. They're both started. double check them with my ratchet. Yep, they're nice and tight. Next we'll tackle the brake pads. Right, so I've got the pads. As you can see, one is slightly different to the other. This one's got the bigger slot to accept the wear sensor. So that would just clip in there. Then as the brake pad wears down to a certain level, the disc starts wearing through the sensor, breaks the circuit and pings a warning light on. So what I'm going to start by doing is just greasing the ears of the pads with copper grease. It just helps them to stay free in the caliper carrier and don't get stuck. Right, okay, so get the outside pad with the smaller slot in first. It goes in nice and easy. Then the other one. Can't really see what I'm doing around here. Let me get down. That's it. The sensor. We need to put it through the caliper. Like so. But we also need to push that piston back in. Which on the front you can just use a G clamp or big grips. So I'll grab the grips and push that in. That's when you might notice brake fluid dripping out underneath the car because we're pushing all that fluid back up the pipe into the reservoir, which is why it's a good idea to leave the cap off. So this slides into there, get it around the right way. It should clip in. Probably do it with a pad out actually. That's it, clicked into place. Push these in. So I've just got two 13mm bolts to go back in there. Yeah, that's right. We'll go ahead and route that sensor loom back in next. So this multi-plug, you know, it'll only go on round one way due to the shape inside of it, like a keyway. So that little peg there should clip in. That's it. And then we'll clip it back in its holder up under there, which might be a bit difficult to see. And all the little clips should line up with bits on the car. You can actually see the marks on the ABS sensor loom where it was plugged in, clipped on rather. This is a bit of a funny one. That's it. And then it went in there. Pop that on. That's in there. Excellent. Okay, so I just need to put these screws back in. Screwdriver. I just sort of do a half turn, those under tray ones, and this you can probably just make sure you get all the legs back in the hole, push that in, and that's it. Right, I've just climbed back inside the car. A very important thing to do after you've had some brakes apart is to pump the brake pedal. If you don't, you might find that when you go to use your brakes, the first time you press the pedal, it'll go to the floor and not a lot will happen. So you may be able to see the caliper move now. I'm just going to pump the pedal now, where it's pushing the piston out and taking up all the slack. And that's it. Only took 3 pumps of the pedal. That should all be in place now. And oh, just jump down. Hopefully that will turn freely. Yeah, which it does. So that's great. Next we'll go ahead and get the wheel back on. Right, I'll drop it down on the floor and check the tightness with a breaker bar. Right, so back on the ground. So yeah, they're all tight. You will find a tightening torque for these, like you will with all fixings on a car. If you've got a torque wrench to hand, that's great. You go ahead and use it. I would guess it's around about 100 to 120 Newton meters for these wheel bolts. Right, something we mustn't forget to do. Check the brake fluid reservoir. It might have overflowed. Oh no, it hasn't. That's okay. Still got a bit of an air bubble at the top there, so that's good. Just go ahead and replace the cap on that. Oh, it has actually overflowed a little bit. So all I'll do, you just need a bit of tap water. Make sure the cap's on properly. And give it a rinse off. It does make a very good paint stripper, so if ever you spill any, make sure you've got some water to hand, maybe a soft cloth. So that's going to drip out of the bottom a little bit, but you can do it outside, obviously, let it run away. That's about it for the front brakes. All I've got left to do now is run it around the block. And again, just make sure you've pumped the brake pedal before you move the car. Make sure the pedal comes up nicely. I'll give it a road test, make sure it all feels okay, and have another quick double check before I let it go out to the customer. Thanks for watching. If you find our videos helpful, please hit like and subscribe to help us out. Nice one.